my story isn't very dramatic. It's pretty subtle, but maybe I feel like the subtleties in gender stories are kind of a problem because they're harder to understand. For a time, I was working at a technician at a company that designed and developed medical devices, and it was a really small startup, and there were 3 men who worked in the office. One of them was a programmer, one of them was the CEO, and the other one was the product manager, and I was the technician. So I built the devices and did troubleshooting, and when they were sent back, I worked on solving the technical problems. And I also prepared the devices, so I downloaded software onto them and programmed them. And I would make some mistakes sometimes, and there was one particular time where I made a mistake and I didn't know how to fix it. And I'm not a programmer, and it was a mistake that involved the code and calibrating the device with that. And I wasn't sure what I did wrong in the process. So I called over the programmer and asked him, and we couldn't figure out what I did wrong. And he called over the product manager, and then the product manager called over the CEO. And it ended up being a situation where I had kind of miscalibrated all of these devices, and I'd have to go back and spend the time to recalibrate them, which is time and money. And I was sitting down with these devices and in front of the computer in the lab, and I had these 3 men standing up behind me, kind of just like hovering over me, and all 3 of them were trying to figure out what I did wrong. And they're all, really well educated, really smart people. The CEO used to work for Enron, and I was pretty intimidated. And I felt really stupid, and what I felt was all of these men were trying to solve the problem that the woman created. And I felt really inept. And it was a really terrible feeling, and I'm fairly sensitive. So, after we worked through it, I had to leave the office, and I went into the bathroom and cried, and I was just frustrated. I was frustrated with myself and the situation, and I felt that it was unfair that they were all standing over me. And I just felt, I felt like I was put in my place as a woman. And not that the men were being malicious or being sexist, but that oftentimes I think men perhaps don't understand the history of gender roles and how they perpetuate that history in everyday life. And this happens all the time, every day, and it's usually not such a big deal. It's usually not that dramatic. In isolated cases, it is. And maybe for some people who aren't me, it's more dramatic, just because of who they are and their situation. But these subtle feelings that I feel, and I know that, the men who are standing over me, looking down on me, didn't feel. And I feel it's really difficult to express that, especially to them. So I guess that's my story.
How do you feel the men would react if they were to hear you tell this story? The men from the story.
I'm not sure. They were really kind people. I'm sure they would have listened to me. I don't know if they would have understood, if I would have had the language at the time to express what was really going on, and the kind of, the history that leads up to a situation like that, and how a woman feels like that, her whole life she's in situations like that. And I also know that gender stereotypes are that women are more sensitive, and gender stereotypes say that women get flustered more easily, or
Sure. Well, thank you. Do you give your permission for this to be posted online?
I give my permission to have this video posted online as part of the Gender Story project, but not for public consumption, just for the class.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.